Anokeesed. All praises to Anokeesed. That's all praises to Anokeesed. That's all praises to the great I am loving kindness. Bahashem Yeshaya. Bahashem Motza, the Lamb. In the name of the Messiah, the Hamashiach, who brings the living water. Shalom, family. This is little son Sabal, Nabaya. Family, there has been a lot of confusion. There has been a lot of debate on this particular topic. So many cling so strongly to whatever it was they were taught. You have one side saying this, and you have another side saying that. But what is the truth? Is the truth even important? Of course the truth is important. Remember, we have talked about before how everything happens in the spiritual realm first, and then the physical realm follows suit. The truth is a spirit. Let's read it in the scriptures. Let's go to John chapter 16. John chapter 16, and let's read verses 12 and 13. That's John chapter 16, verses 12 and 13. It says, I have yet many things to say to you. Salakia. It says, I have yet many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. So family, the truth is important. So let's get down to it. Let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 1, and let's read verse 1. That's Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So family, in the beginning, Anokeesed created the heaven and the earth. So let's take a closer look at what else was going on. Let's go to 1 John chapter 5, and let's read verse 1. 1 John chapter 5, verse 1. It says, whosoever believeth that Yeshua is the Christ is born of God, and everyone that loveth him, that begat, loveth him, also that is begotten of him. So family, that verse all by itself is extremely powerful, especially when you understand what it is that each of the high priest communities do to help begat the Messiah. But that's a discussion for another day. For now, stay in this same chapter. Stay in 1 John chapter 5 and drop down and let's read verses 6 and 7. That's 1 John chapter 5 verses 6 and 7. It says, this is he that came by water and blood, even Yeshua Christ, not by water only, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit that beareth witness, because the Spirit is truth. For there are three that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. And these three are one. So family, the truth is the Spirit. And you know, it just makes sense that truth would bear record of truth. I mean, it really has to when you think about it. But we're not done. Let's see what else the Messiah had to say about truth. Let's go to John chapter 4, and let's read verses 23 and 24. That's John chapter 4, verses 23 and 24. It says, "But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." Again, just with these two verses, we can talk about that subject for a whole 2 hours, but we're not going to. I just want you to understand that we are dealing with the three who bear record in heaven. And we understand the truth of these scriptures because many of us have studied these scriptures, have gone into these scriptures. Some of us can quote them forwards and backwards, upside down, turned around, all kinds of ways. But even with the simplicity and the truth of these scriptures that is being presented, you still get that clashing. You still get people that debate. They don't understand the relationship between the Father and his Son. And when you don't understand that relationship, that means when you think about the Father or the Son, then you might be thinking about them the wrong way. And it's okay because there's grace for that. The Messiah understands and he'll work with you where you are. But when you know better, you do better. So let's get some edification going. So family, we have talked about the process of becoming. We have talked about that process before in the past. We talked about how that process of becoming, of stepping into who you are supposed to be, we talked about how it follows the holy order. And that order is say, feel, do, and be. Again, that order is say, feel, do, and be. So family, let's go into the book of remembrance of Melchizedek. The book of remembrance of Melchizedek, chapter 2. And let's read verses 17 and 18. That's the book of remembrance of Melchizedek, chapter 2, verses 17 and 18. This is the seer, and he is looking with the Urim, and he is viewing these things that took place, not at the very beginning, but a little bit after the beginning. So let's start right now in verse 17. It says, "And I looked, and it came to my mind by the Spirit just what they were seeing and feeling, and they saw the process of becoming. For in Elda up until then, there had only been the condition of being, and they saw and discerned in themselves the cycles of life that had beginnings and endings in that which lay before them, and they could feel their struggles and triumphs and the processes of their lives. And I was so accustomed to feeling the process of becoming that I did not know to recognize it as agency. But to them, it was startlingly new and very clear to see." Okay, we're going to stop right there before we read verse 18, because I want to explain to you that it says that the process of becoming was agency. We understand, family, that agency is free will. It is the ability to choose left or right, up or down, good or evil, which way you shall go. So the process of becoming was agency. Now let's read verse 18. It says, and becoming is absolutely driven by agency, as the living choose their way freely, either to listen to Anokeesed or not. That listen, y'all, that's to say. Let's keep reading. Either to feel the light of Anokeesed or not. That's to feel. Either to act, to bond together in the love of Anokeesed or not. That's the do. And either to be like Anokeesed in following his example or not. And that's the be, of course. And in Elda, agency was not known up until then. So that which came before the eyes and hearts of the Irkadeshi in that very moment was the new beginning of agency in the inception of it. So let's reread verse 18 without me interjecting. And becoming is absolutely driven by agency, as the living choose their way freely, either to listen to Anokeesed or not, either to feel the light of Anokeesed or not, either to act, to bond together in the love of Anokeesed or not, and either to be like Anokeesed in following his example or not. And in Elda, agency was not known up until then. So that which came before the eyes and hearts of the Irkadeshi in that very moment was the new beginning of agency in the inception of it. And family, we understand who and what the Irkadeshi are. But if you're new to this channel and you don't know what the Irkadeshi are the Holy Watchers. And the Holy Watchers, their forms as creation. They are the storehouse of the Holy Spirit. So they are all the beautiful things in creation that we behold when we just live here on the earth. They are the wind, the water, the rains, the mountain, the hills, the fountains, all these beautiful things, the sun, the moon, the stars, even the seasons, Irkadeshi, all of them. And they are the 24 elders that we read about in the book of Revelation. And family, I want you to understand what is happening here that we're reading in the book of remembrance of Melchizedek, because the Irkadeshi are here speaking with the Father. So let's go ahead and read verses, 19 through 22. That's Melchizedek chapter 2, verses 19 through 22. It says, and it came to pass that I saw a wondrous sight, and I heard the Irkadeshi exclaim aloud with much enthusiasm and adulation, never have we felt so at home as we feel here at the edge of eternity. And the wind sang, and the mountains rejoiced, and the hills danced with joy, and the fountains wept in their delight, and the thunder clapped her hands in happiness, and the rocks made great exclamations, and the trees bore the news in their celebrations. And immediately the Lord was instructing me in my mind by the word of his presence, and I heard that becoming was deeply embedded in the very souls of the Irkadeshi, for the rivers flow, and the winds blow, and the trees grow, and the rocks know, and the fires glow, and the sun will show that the fountains go, all in their love to be our home. And they said to Anokeesed, we always want to live here, and we do not want to leave this place. And Anokeesed said softly unto them, then you shall be my counselors, and we shall confer here together, and we shall come to an understanding, and find answers here together. Salakia, and find answers together here, regarding your task in your new home in this place. And I could plainly feel the thoughts of the Irkadeshi, and they whispered among themselves, saying, The edge of eternity is influencing Anokeesed. For how can one who comprehends all things come to understanding by seeking the advice of others? And the Irkadeshi were stunned when Anokeesed continued and said, I have a question to which I need an answer. And he said, Shall I create all the spirits of mankind? And they whispered, How can one who knows all things ask questions and seek outside himself to find answers? And they could clearly sense that the edge of eternity was having profound effects indeed upon them all, including upon Anokeesed himself. And they all marveled greatly and were struck with wonder. So family, we could keep reading these verses and they just get better and better and better. But I don't want us to lose focus about what we're talking about today. So I read these verses so you would understand. One, that we're dealing with something that happened way back when. Something that happened way back before we were created. This was after the beginning, but it was before us. And I want you to pay attention to how the Irkadeshi were surprised to learn that the Most High, Anokeesed himself, had questions. How can one who has all the answers have questions? And you're going to see why and how very soon. Stay in the Book of Remembrance of Melchizedek chapter 2. And let's drop down to verse 43. And we're going to read 43 through 56. And we may stop and talk along the way. That's 43 through 56. It says, And now I said to myself, Now I know why all the Irkadeshi felt like the edge of eternity was home, because it was built into their souls that they would be the companions and sustainers of mankind throughout all the course of creation. But I also could foresee that in the course of the earth there will come a time that wickedness will increase to such an extent that it will become necessary to set a limit to the tolerance of the Irkadeshi to endure, as the wicked dwell in their midst. And Anokeesed discerned their thoughts, and he said, You were created for man, and they are the objects of your creation, and the feelings of home you feel will generate a home for all my children through righteousness, whether they be good or evil. And you will live here at the edge of eternity with all my children, and you will have all the joys and the sorrows of the passages of life in your becoming, and in their becoming, no matter what they become, and you too will have agency. And all the Irkadeshi leapt for joy at the prospect of their becoming with agency, and they were overcome and still could not speak. But I hoped they knew what they were in for. So family, Anokeesed just told them how important they are to the objects of creation, which is us, which is men and women. And when he told them that, the Irkadeshi, they celebrated, they jumped for joy, because they get to express agency in becoming. And family, we've studied what happened in the covenant of Shabuah when they severed themselves. Understand that they made a choice to sever themselves in holiness with the Messiah in the order of Melchizedek. So they celebrated these things. But pay attention to this. Look what it says in verse 45. While everybody else was celebrating, check out what Ebedel was doing in verse 45. But Ebedel was solid, and she retained her composure unlike the rest. And she approached Anokeesed, and she asked, "O Anokeesed, what is the edge of eternity called, where we shall abide with your children in the midst of their becoming?" And he answered, "It is called heaven, and all of you shall dwell here in this place with me and with them." And the council discerned the sorrow of Anokeesed. And Ebedel said, "What of those among your children who sin and make choices to go astray? Can we still abide with them here in this place called heaven?" And Anokeesed wept, and he said, "When they sin, heaven will be transformed, so as to be seen by them to be the temporal earth. O my poor soul, what shall I do to save those who sin and go astray from knowing me, so that they may live with us here in heaven?" And Anokeesed thought a good long while, and finally he gathered all the council, and they spoke together and considered his questions. And Anokeesed began to ponder within himself in his heart the difference that he felt in his soul, being influenced here at the edge of eternity. And he reasoned upon these things intelligently, and he said, "I came to this place, and my loving kindness found a new place to go in my love, and I allowed myself to not know, in like manner as you and my children. And I chose to seek outside myself for answers with all of you and them, and to come to understanding with all of you together. I felt the feelings of grief at the prospect of your guidance concerning the sins of my children, in their not being able to abide with me here in heaven. And it is a wonderment to me that all these feelings will be what all my children will feel in their pathway to becoming. And I can see that the edge of eternity has shown me that I and my children and all of you will feel the very same feelings together, whether to our joy or to our sorrow." And I said, "O Lord, how can I live knowing Anokeesed has sorrow?" And he looked upon me with eyes of compassion. So family, is very important what Anokeesed just said. He said that he found a new place to go in love, and he allowed himself to not know. That is something, wow, to have the power to allow yourself to not know. And he chose to seek outside of himself for answers. And he chose to come to understanding with all of them together. So family, are you understanding what happened here? By allowing himself to not know something, and by seeking outside of himself to be able to come to an understanding, the part of him who is the Messiah came into being. And then look there at the end of verse 47. This is the seer. The seer said, "O Lord, how can I live knowing Anokeesed has sorrow?" And he looked upon me with eyes of compassion. So the seer made that exclamation, and the Messiah looked upon him with eyes of compassion. Now, let's pick it up at verse 48. And Anokeesed continued, and he said, "So I now declare that the part of my soul that has been thus influenced by the edge of eternity to not know, and to seek understanding, and to wonder, and to feel joy or sorrow, shall leave Elda and enter in at the edge of eternity, to walk among my children, to save them when they sin, and to forgive them, and to redeem them back to holiness of heart, and join them to you and to me here in heaven. So, to forgive them, that's salvation. And where it says to join them back with him in heaven, that's righteousness. That is redemption. You see, family, the right relationship with the Father is for us to be with him, because we were created in Elda. We were created with him. So redemption will put us back into the most extreme form of righteousness, and that is to be with our Father who art in heaven. And we just read that heaven is the edge of eternity. Let's pick it up at verse 49. And I further declare that this very part of me that I have thus described shall become a man to walk among men, and he shall be called my son, and my words will be his words, and my feelings will be his feelings, and what he does will be that which I do, and I shall be the living water of life for them through my son. And thus my soul here at the edge of eternity shall spill out and flow over like living water into the midst of my children. Wow, family, did y'all just read that? He said, this very part of me shall become a man, and he shall be called my son, and my words will be his words, and my feelings will be his feelings, and what he does will be what I do, and I shall be the living water. That is the holy order. My words shall be his words. That is what he says. And his feelings will be his feelings. That is what he feels. And what he does will be that which I do, and that's self-explanatory. And I shall be the living water. Say, feel, do, and be. So now, family, we start to see why it is so important to follow the example of the Messiah. Why it is so important for us to exercise those higher sentiments. Why it is so important for us to show compassion and mercy and tenderness and brotherly love. Family, it is because the law of love is the most important law, and it is the heart of the Father. So now, Amos 3:3 makes more sense. Let's read it. Amos 3:3. Can two walk together except they be agreed? And what did we read earlier in 1 John chapter 5, verse 7? For there are three that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. And these three are one. These three are one. These three walk together because these three agree. And we just read in Melchizedek where it said, and my words will be his words, and my feelings will be his feelings, and what he does will be that which I do, and I shall be living water of life for them through my son. Do y'all see that? He said, I shall be the living water of life for them through my son. Now you can see the gravity of Jeremiah. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2 and read verse 13. That's Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. It says, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of the living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water. Do y'all see that, family? The living water That's what we should be thirsting for. Let's go to John chapter 4 and let's read verse 14. That's John chapter 4, verse 14. Messiah says this: "But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life." Let's read some more about this living water. Let's pick it up at verse 50. It says, "And I will flow out with them into the temporal world, to accompany them in all their acts of becoming, whether for good or for ill, and in all their daily walk in their families. And because I will be like them in that which they experience, being a man like them, I will do so in the form of my Son, with the need to exercise my agency also. And I will not overpower them with my presence as a man in the temporal world, and I will become in their midst together with them, and not receive a fullness at the first. So I will go myself, and grow grace for grace, and set for them a living example of my loving kindness in the temporal world." And family, we always say that the Messiah is the example. You want to be righteous? Follow his example. Verse 53. "And thus it can be borne witness to that the Son of God, as he walked among men, lived in time and place, and he asked questions, and conferred with his fellows, and made request to his Father in heaven, and he sought answers outside himself to bring understanding to the children of men. And because he walks in the flesh with his children in the temporal world, he will be subjected to experience their errors and ignorance and sins and waywardness, and he can love them with a father's love to save them in spite of their sin, and he can show them the way and how he uses his agency, and the manner in which he chooses will be an example to them, insomuch that when they know him and can join with him and love him, they shall know Anokeesed and love him, and in the end be redeemed back into Elder to live with him." Righteousness. And we talked about that earlier. We talked about how redemption puts us back in the extreme right relationship, because then we're being with our Father who art in heaven. Verse 54. "And so it is very important that all the righteous cling to this example of how Anokeesed and the man that he became have used and expressed their agency, and in these things we can now see how the Son of God was begotten at the edge of eternity, and now we can get a glimpse of what part of God the Son is, all of which came to be because of the infinite love Anokeesed has for sinful man, and their pattern in their decision making or use of agency of say, feel, do, and be is not merely 4 steps to follow, but they are a spontaneous way of thinking, and they are habits of emotion, and they are patterns of the use of your intelligence, and they are a natural way of showing forth good and virtuous behavior, supported by the Spirit of your Redeemer that lives within you. Isn't that powerful and beautiful, family? Let's pick it up. Verse 56. "And I see Ebedel is wise." Ebedel is the holy watcher of the rocks, family. "And I see Ebedel is wise, and she is teaching the other watchers of the presence. And she is saying, because the man that Anokeesed will become will express only and completely the agency of Anokeesed as he did at the edge of eternity, it must need be that he create the earth, so that all the elements of the earth that have found form by his hand will show forth the agency of Anokeesed in the temporal world also. Man, that's heavy. So Ebedil said, because the man that Anokeesed will become will express only and completely the agency of Anokeesed. So she's saying that because he's going to come down, yes, he has free will, but he's only going to express the will of the Father. Let's go and read in John chapter 6. Let's read verse 38. John chapter 6 verse 38. It says, "For I came down from heaven, not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me." And we just read that Messiah is the ultimate example. So now, let Matthew chapter 12 really sink in. Let's go to Matthew chapter 12 and read verse 50. Matthew chapter 12 verse 50. "For whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother." So his family is him that does the will of his Father. And look again in verse 56 in Melchizedek chapter 2. It says, "But the man that Anokeesed will become will express only and completely the agency of Anokeesed, as he did at the edge of eternity. It must need be that he create the earth, so that all the elements of the earth that have found form by his hand will show forth the agency of Anokeesed in the temporal world also." And we see that truth echoed in Colossians chapter 1. Let's go to Colossians chapter 1 and let's read verses 16 through 18. That's Colossians chapter 1 verses 16 through 18. It says, "For by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have preeminence." And family, that's super deep when you understand that even in the wicked doing what they do, even in the act that was the fallen watchers choosing to follow Satan, even in what every dirty deed that has been wrought upon you was at the time that it was happening, all of these acts, all of these things, all of this is agency. And because we were given that gift, then it is evident when it is exercised. Family, I pray that y'all got some understanding from this today. If you have gotten to this point in the video and you don't understand the relationship the Father has with his Son, then start this over from the beginning and listen to it again. If you don't understand the process of becoming and agency, the holy order, that is say, feel, do, and be, then start this over and listen to it again from the beginning. And if you listen to it again and you still don't understand, then put your questions in the comment section. I just want y'all to be edified. With that said, family, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Check out Peasy's channel at Real Judah here on YouTube. He has some fire lessons that are sure to bring edification. And y'all check out Teshuba's channel. This brother has a beautiful spirit of humility all over him. He's bringing fire music and thought-provoking gems. Also, family, check out the website at www.anokeesed.com. With that said, family, remember that I love each and every one of you. The water, Kai. All praises to Anokeesed. Bahashem Motza the Lamb. This is little son Sabal saying much love and much shalom.